welcome. My name is Jake Valancourt. I'm a co-founder and partner at 10X Engineered Materials, and I'm joined by our CEO, Dr. Stephen Ritchie, and we're joined by a special guest as well, Jacob Magner from Encrypted Coatings. And Jacob has a powder coating group or forum on Facebook and some other channels as well. So, Jake, you want to talk a little bit about that and introduce yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. My name's Jacob Magner. I run a group on Facebook that helps people start up powder coating businesses. It's pretty straightforward. My background is in metal finishing. Ran a tier 1 plating company for a while, and then started my own powder coating business.
All right. Couple things tonight. We are going to be answering questions at the end of our little presentation here. This presentation is not that long. The focus is actually to help powder coating companies transition from a process that is reliant upon a chemical that's going away to the blasting process. Jacob Magner has quite a bit of experience with our materials and has also learned a bit about how we optimize and what we're looking for. And Steve is the inventor of the technology and has background in research and technology commercialization and a whole bunch of other technical things that make a lot of people very jealous. So Steve, you want to say a couple words before we hop into the deck?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a scientist at heart. I have been my whole life, and we're at 10X. We're very excited with the difference our materials are able to make for people, particularly in powder coating. We'd love to see chemical strippers no longer needed, and that's a lot of what this webinar is about, is to talk about the issues that are coming up. They're all new. There's big changes coming, and how 10X Abrasives can provide you with an alternative that's maybe better than what you've been able to do historically. So with that, you guys can take it away.
Okay, I'm going to get right into it. A little bit about 10X and our focus. We are the manufacturers of the world's safest high-performance abrasive. So we focus a lot on health and safety, and our materials are 100% recycled. So environmental stewardship is in the ethos of what our company stands for. Like Steve said a little bit, science-based innovation. That's what we are working on and continue to work on and always will. And we're delivering what we now know and can confidently say is a breakthrough in performance and quality. And Jacob has seen some of this, and so have a lot of the people in the group as well. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. So methylene chloride, what is it? It's a bugger. it's known as DCM. It's volatile. It's colorless, and it's nasty stuff. It's a chlorinated solvent. And the textbook definition is here on the screen for everybody. It is going away. The EPA is working on regulating its use in industry out, and that's largely due to health reasons. So there's a reason, though, that this industry uses it, and many industries use it, not just powder coating. Why are we chemically stripping? It's efficient. It's ideal for many of these applications. The process is ideal. It's not ideal for human health and environmental safety, but it's ideal from a process perspective in many ways and in many applications. And it's effective. It's faster than the thermal burn-off, and a lot of abrasives on the market will struggle to remove some of the more difficult powder coats out there as well. And it is an effective grease removal in many applications as well. So it's used, it has been used because it's effective, largely. So there are drawbacks, and this is kind of starting to touch upon why it's going away. So it is hazardous, or it's hazardous to human health, immediate contact, can cause chemical burns and like really, really bad ones. Doesn't have to be a long contact either. And then longer term health outcomes. There's studies out there that link this to cancer risk and also neurotoxicity. Um, it's also, this isn't why the EPA is going in the direction they are, but why some processors have already, moved on from chemical stripping. Some of our customers have totally eliminated their reliance upon that and go to just blasting. And a lot of it is, they get certain alloys that they don't know what they are, or their customer unfortunately doesn't know what they are, and they're expensive parts. Typically the parts that aren't going to be able to make it through chemical stripping because they'll be ruined or totally destroyed one way or the other are more expensive metallurgies. So there's some downsides, there's some risks in that way. Of course, there's ways to test what the metals are, but that again adds steps to your process. And there's a cost component here. Think of it as an extra step. And Jacob, I know you've talked with me a few times about that in a business process, like having that extra step, if it's not necessary, just adds cost, and it also the chance for failure, and it's also it's reducing, or sorry, it's increasing the amount of time that you have to spend on a part.
Yep, exactly.
So the main reason is safety, right? The EPA made a determination, and they issued this with a final rule back in 2022, late 2022. There's other chemicals out there that have gone this way as well. There's a few examples here. This is very unlikely to change. I don't think that this is political. I suspect that this is going to stick, and we've already seen some suppliers actually exit the market entirely because of what's coming. So the regulations that are coming and what they're talking about, it's the 2024 methylene chloride regulation under the Toxic Substances Control Act. EPA's making a cutoff for the use of this as of May 8th, May 8th, 2029, on what is essentially a special cutout, and that's for use removing paint from wooden furniture. For most other applications, the cutoffs are actually quite a bit sooner. We're looking at the things that are coming into effect this year, and I believe we have a chart on that.
Yep.
So here's your timeline. February 3rd, that's when the hammer came down, where you have to stop distributing it in commerce. May 5th this year is when retailers will have to stop distributing it. And manufacturing, other than for the special cases that we already talked about, will become prohibited. And this is a question that we were asked even before this presentation. So, well, what about the imports? And no, the law, the regulations are very specific on that. It includes a ban on imports, so we put that on the timeline. Thought it was important to put it there. And then beginning August this year, we have processors are now going to be prohibited from processing it. And then you have late April next year, where the users, industrial and commercial users, will be prohibited from the use of the material. And then special cutout, everything is ending May 8th, 2029, regardless of what the application is or the end use is. So this is going away, and depending on where you are in the industry, it's going away a lot sooner than later. So now is the time to be making a plan for how you're going to adapt your business to this. Yes, it's totally, I've heard this a few times. Well, hey, I stocked up, so I'll have some for 9 months. Great. What are you going to do after that?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get it.
Yeah, you're going to set yourself up for failure doing it that way.
Yeah. I don't know how much this has been talked about yet, Jake. What's your sense?
I think a lot of suppliers have realized it's coming even before it was public, because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of like non-methyl chloride based strippers popping up out of nowhere. I mean, it's all over the place. And, I've got to test a few. Some are okay. But I think that there's going to be a big change in how people are processing parts. Everybody's gonna have to start getting metal tanks. You're not gonna be able to use the overpack drums anymore, because obviously most of these eco strippers require some heat. I mean, that's how a lot of them work, is they require a lot of heat, which then creates steam. It creates a lot of other, in the air particles and things like that. So there's definitely some stuff some people are gonna have to start investing money into. And then there's a lot of people that just already have, the high pressure sandblasting and stuff, and they're going to really rely on using the right media for that. So that's why I'm here. I really think you guys have a great product. So.
Okay. I think this is a good overview. We'll keep going. The Workplace Chemical Protection Program. So if you're using this material, even under special use, like say you're working on wooden furniture, you're going to be required to develop and implement an exposure control plan. And one of my colleagues who researches these sorts of things explained to me that for a small business, developing that, implementing it, and being able to survive an audit, because if you're 1 in 1,000, you're going to continue to use it somehow under some special program. You can bet yourself that you're going to get audited, and it's probably going to be more than
expensive.
Oh yeah, yep. And then of course, if you don't pass that audit, the cost of that, the fines and everything, it's just, I don't think it's worth it. However, there's a way to do this, and this kind of touches upon some of the basic requirements. But even reaching those requirements, the exposure limits are very, very low. The testing that's necessary is expensive, and it's fraught with issues. It was explained to me that it's much harder to pass the test, even if you do everything that in theory works. You can still have something pop too high, and now your whole program is in jeopardy, being shut down. So it's tough. So of course, we're an abrasive manufacturer. Superoxalloy abrasives is what we make, all made in the U.S. And we're going to talk about how we would like you to adapt. But in talking with Jacob and talking with a lot of our powder coating customers, we have a number of powder coating customers who've adopted our product. They started in a cabinet, some suction cabinets, some pressure, and then they moved on from that to, okay, now we're going to get a 185 or even a 375. A couple of our customers have upgraded to 375 compressors, and they're able to put a lot of horsepower out of the end of that nozzle. And what I can tell you is that the customers that we have who have made that transition, yes, it was an investment, but the return they're getting on that is, well, my workers who are nervous about safety with some of them have had chemical burns. I'm not talking long-term risk. I mean immediate, where a guy's hurt his hand or something like that. One guy had an eye injury that was god awful. But these kinds of risks, if you can just totally eliminate that, because they're investing in blasting, and what used to take them say 15, 20 minutes for a car wheel, for example, and now they're getting that done in under 6. The guys who are running a 375 laugh and say, I can do it in under 2. I'm like, all right, sure. Yeah. How quick you can maneuver the wheel around, or if you set it up and really get your rollers set right, awesome. The point being, there is an alternative to this that doesn't require any chemical strippers. And that's what we're going to talk about. The alternatives that aren't going to use an abrasive process directly to do the primary work would be the thermal burn off, right? But now, I don't know, Jacob, how would you look at that?
I mean, the thermal, so I never like doing that. We have a natural gas oven. I don't like the idea of it. Metallurgically, there's a lot of research on a lot of different parts that we do that would need to happen for me to feel safe about it. Especially it's like aluminum, you really can't even do that too, because then you're really risking the chance of warping apart. And then thinner steels. I mean, you were talking about doing something that is very, very limited as far as what application you could use it for. And then on top of that, just doing it out of like knowing in the back of your head, you could be warping somebody's part to such a minute level that it might cause it to be deformed and not perform properly. I mean, I don't like the idea of it. I do think there's going to be a lot of people that probably will start trying to do that. I know that there's guys that have done it successfully. But I think that the best way to go about it, if you're not going to get into the eco stripper game and you're going to start, I mean, we're all going to have to figure out something very soon. And I just think that the natural thing that's always worked is just sandblasting, so if you have a media that you can put in there that you can reclaim and reuse and it just works, then that's what I'm recommending. So
Some of the issues that I see with the thermal burn off, right? You're going to be using a lot more energy. That costs real money, especially in today's day and age. And you're either going to have to increase your oven capacity to get the same amount of finished product out, or you're going to have a new bottleneck essentially that didn't exist before. And then of course you talked about the process risk and the potential impact of part quality. That's totally valid. I think some people feel more comfortable with those kinds of risks, and some people feel like that's a non-starter. We're not even going to go through that thought process. So I think the opinions out there on that are all over the map. But I would tend to agree with you. I do have a bit of an aviation background, and
exactly.
I wouldn't want parts in an airplane I'm flying.
No, exactly. And we do airplane parts all the time, and that's one of the things. I'm like, no, and it's just you got to be careful with this certain things that you're doing.
Yep, absolutely. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how can we do this with an abrasive, and actually eliminating the chemical stripping entirely from your process, right? There's some benefits to this if you actually invest in it. If you just simply have a suction cabinet and your compressor's undersized, this isn't going to work. You're going to have to do more than that. A lot of our customers that first start with us are starting with an undersized compressor, and then they're working up from there. You got to start somewhere, but I'll tell you the lower first cost has a much higher ongoing cost in a process like this. So to me, it's totally worth the investment. Now we'll talk a little bit about that. So if you're in a space limited shop or layout, and you are already going to have some square footage devoted to blasting anyways, and you're going to eliminate the chemical stripping, you're freeing up some floor space. How much is definitely going to depend on, that's going to be unique for everybody. But there's a real consideration there of freeing up some floor space or clawing that floor space into your blasting space, potentially, if that's an option. Getting rid of the chemical strippers, right? We can't predict what the regulations will be in the future, but I've heard from a lot of folks who said, well, now that the good stripper is going away and I've got to do all this extra stuff to make a chemical stripper actually work the way that the methylene chloride ones, base ones would work, saying, hey, I'm going to do all this work, and then 6, 12 months, 2 years later, whatever, it's going to change again, and that's going to go away too. So a lot of people are saying, now I'm confident that an abrasive like 10X is going to be around. It's got staying power. So a lot of folks that we've been talking to are going that way. But eliminating that process entirely is definitely taking off some regulatory requirements from the business operation. I think it's an improvement to morale in some cases, depending on the type of workforce you have, that can help. And of course, faster turnaround times. If you are putting out enough horsepower through your nozzle and you're using an abrasive like Epic or 10X, it's amazing how fast you can actually go. We've blown it out of the water, and we can show you exactly how to do that. And there's also, like Jacob and I said on the last couple slides here, is if we're not doing the thermal runoff and we're not doing, we're basically eliminating an entire step. You're going to have to blast anyways. Now we're just going right to blast. You have less chances for process failures or process variations, and there's a real benefit to that, not just in cost but in quality. So I encourage people to think about that. So now we're kind of laying the framework here for what is making this transition and still maintaining profitability and potentially even boosting that profitability look like? So we want to be able to get the job work done on time or ahead of schedule. We need fast blasting. Getting your abrasive consumption in, within the parameters that we expect is important. We can help minimize your downtime. We have an amazingly safe abrasive. Some of our customers in this industry have some specs they have to hit. And when we take away a step in the production process, being compliant with those specs just tends to get easier. And also we're helping to minimize rework. What we want to talk about today, we don't like to have to do rework. Rework is probably the most expensive thing in a powder coating operation that you can end up having to do. So every component of a blasting system has a purpose, key purpose. And if any one of those components is out of whack, it can make the difference between being profitable and even running at a loss on a particular part of the job. So this is a nice little visual here. And a throw out to our colleague Elena for pulling this into this presentation. I don't expect everyone's compressor to look like this. And again, this is just for illustration purposes, but the compressor is where it starts. It's the engine of the blasting system. Think of it as the heart of a blasting process. And it's just really important to make sure that the amount of CFM you need, right? I always tell everybody, always get 2 sizes bigger. Oh, I need a 185. Great, I have 375. Why would I do that? Because you're going to grow and you're going to have this and that. And now you're running, another spray gun over here, or whatever it may be. Maybe you're going to get into something that needs other sources of compressed air. And you're stealing your productivity from your blasting process if your compressor that you have in your facility is sized for that process, and now you grow. So if you upsize your compressor, you can avoid that problem to begin with. So that's what I recommend. But the key here is to not undersize. At a minimum, do not undersize. Make sure that you're able to get the recommended pressures. And we have charts on our website, and Jacob and myself are available in the group for anybody who needs to, kind of bounce ideas off of, hey, would this work? Would that work? This is what we do. We make sure that you get the right answers. Common issues with the compressors, we have them down the bottom left here. Again, undersizing is the biggest issue we see. Outside of that, a lot of times we've seen people, well, I want to save energy, so I set my compressor at 60 psi. Great. That's great if you're not blasting. Or maybe it's 80 psi, whatever you need for the other processes. But if you're blasting, you need to be able to achieve the recommended pressures for the job. And that's typically going to be, we want you to be able to hit 100, maybe 110 at the nozzle. Sometimes it's a little different. But if we're actually going to a powder coat removal, properly adhered powder, it can be one of the very difficult coatings to remove. You need the energy to do that work. So it's very important to get that pressure right. And then, of course, the compressor controls. Compressors can be set with all kinds of energy saving features that are great, but sometimes they get in the way of performance. So again, that's very situation to situation. Even the 2 identical compressors can come from the factory. Sometimes different dealerships have different programming logic they put in there, and it can, one can work great, and the other one can be an issue. So we see that. Next step, air dryer. If we're sending wet air to what you're trying to do, you're going to get embedment. You're going to have all kinds of issues that come with that. Compressors are taking, at least 100 to 1. The air that's in the atmosphere is being compressed 100 times. We're squeezing the water out of the air, and now we're throwing it at the substrate at a high pressure. And there's reasons why most compressed air systems are always going to include, right out of the gate, some sort of air dryer, and then maybe even additional moisture or water separator. So it's important to make sure that the air dryer in your system is expected for the CFM compressor. If it's undersized, it won't perform. Oversize isn't usually an issue, but it's just not cost efficient. So you want to make sure that those are married up to each other appropriately. If you have moisture in your blast air, we've seen excessive abrasive residue left on the surface. You've seen problems with the coating quality in some cases after blasting, and a lot of that's just because of the first problem we talked about. And our abrasive has an uncommon benefit, which is delaying the formation of rust bloom after blasting. And that often goes away if you're blasting with a bunch of moisture in your air. So you want to avoid that. And again, your abrasive metering can be challenged. It can have issues if you are blasting with wet air. So there's a number of reasons, technically speaking, that we want a good, clean, dry air. Blast pot metering valve. So now for this example, we're specifically talking about a pressure system, not a suction system in a cabinet. And there are a lot of cabinets out there that are great with suction systems, but in my opinion, if you're replacing chemical stripping and you have any kind of volume of parts going through your business, you're going to want a pressure system. So that's why we're focusing on this, because this whole video is essentially informing you of the changes regulatory-wise with the loss of a chemical that a lot of folks are using in their business to do the work, and how to adapt to that. I would not adapt. If I had one of these businesses, I would not try to go in with a suction cabinet. I would immediately go to pressure blasting.
And a suction cabinet won't even remove powder. I mean, you would be spending hours and hours on. I mean, you'd spend at least 6 hours on one wheel.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't be feasible to even be a business.
Yeah.
So.
And we have customers, to give you a sense, that are doing, now I don't know that it's like some giant 28-inch wheel, but that are doing an average size wheel in under 5 minutes. And then we have customers with a 375 that are saying they can do it in a little under 2 minutes. And that would just never happen with a suction system. That's all.
No, I strongly agree with you. This type of setup is ideal, honestly, for even if methyl chloride wasn't going away. This is really where it's at. I mean, the amount of time that you put something in a methyl chloride stripper, and then by the time you rinse it off, pull it out, take it into usually a siphon cabinet, blast it off, you could have already been done using 10X and something like that within 5 minutes.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And every time you have to move your part, there's a little bit of risk in there. So if we're taking the number of times we have to touch that part from when the customer drops it off to when it's finished or stripped down, however your operation runs, the better chances we have of actually making money on that given part. And I like to think in terms of that, right? But reduce the risk, increase the chance of profitability.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we've kind of covered this. There's some, I don't want to read this verbatim on the screen, but if you're new to this type of blasting process, please feel free to reach out. We have awesome resources on our website, and we have engineers that are available for qualified customers to do one-on-one meetings and orientations and troubleshooting if needed. This is so important, and I know this isn't hard pipe here. We're using examples of what we would see in large industry. But regardless of how you connect from your compressor to your air dryer to your blast pot, and then and your blast pot to your nozzle, it's all about sizing correctly. If you undersize that, I don't care how, you could have a 600 horsepower compressor running one blast nozzle, but if you undersize the critical connection points, you might as well have a 10 horsepower compressor. It's just not going to work. You can't limit the energy delivery of the compressed air. You're paying, think of it this way. If you're doing this, you're investing a lot of money into getting that air compressed, clean, and dry. And then to undersize it, you're just not going to get your return on that investment. So it's very important to do this. We have guides on our website that actually help you understand exactly how to size your hoses, your nozzles, and all of that. So it's pretty simple, but we focus on this so much because a lot of people undersize things, right? Hey, I'm buying hose or I'm buying pipe, and if I go a quarter or a half inch, lower, look at I can get this deal, and really the worst deal going. Nozzle is similar. There's a lot of different kinds of nozzles out there. Our abrasives work with. I've not seen a nozzle that our abrasive doesn't work with. Some are better than others. We prefer this XL nozzle. For some applications, it's not appropriate. We have an entire web page, and I think even a video now about nozzle selection. And it's similar to the connections that we talked about. Is don't undersize it. The other thing that happens is people get it right, but then they've been blasting. They've got 4,000 hours of blasting time on a nozzle, and that nozzle is now 3 sizes bigger than when you first bought it. These things are wear items. They're consumables. They wear out, and when they wear out, it's time to replace them. You're not getting again a return on your investment in this whole blasting system if you're running a nozzle that's 3 sizes bigger or 2 sizes bigger than what it's supposed to be. You'll have your air pressure get reduced, and the Venturi effect also is gone. That Venturi is not doing what it was designed to do once it's opened down. So just think about that. This Steve has talked about this so much. Blaster training and technique can make or break whether the business works. This particular image here is Mike is the blaster. He's a Canadian customer of ours, powder coater. They use Epix MP. They were so impressed with our product that they actually asked if we could do a customer spotlight, like a testimonial. So there's a video on our YouTube channel. Impact Coatings is the name of the business. I think they've been using our product now for a little over a year. And they told us that once they got the pressure up and understood how to use our product, that they were able to double their throughput and double their profitability. Also, that being in Canada, they haven't had a methylene chloride option up there for a while now, and they had already gotten rid of and got away from that. They would only do a process like that in an emergency situation, and they're blasting everything. So they had a huge setup, and they're able to. If you watch the video, it's wild. I mean, the part that's there, I think he's done in something like 10 seconds. He's got to flip it around, and he's got 10 seconds on the other side. But it's very fast. He said that blasting used to be the bottleneck for the business, and now coating, everything other than blasting takes much longer. The blasting, he's able to put parts out that are ready to go at 2, 3, 4 times faster than what the rest of the line can keep up with. And that's what our product can do if you make the investment that we're suggesting. Jacob, Steve, do you guys have any comments here before we go to the last couple of slides?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with everything. I mean, I think it's kind of like foreshadowing a little bit. Canada's been out of that for a while, and they're choosing to do this method for a reason. So I'm sure they have the ability to use like the eco strippers and stuff, but they're just all of them that I've tested. And I have not tested all of them, but all of them that I have tested, I just think blasting is going to be the future at this point. So the coatings are getting harder and more durable, and the strippers are getting weaker. So
yeah, those two don't go well together.
Yeah, it's not what you want. So.
Yeah. All right, Steve.
No, I would just reiterate what you said. I mean, we've seen every kind of blasting operation, large and small, and what we find really interesting examples happen in the really big operations like shipyards, train maintenance depots, where you go and the blast booth, the equipment is all very similar between 2 separate operations, and one is vastly more efficient than the other. And you start scratching your head and you realize that one of them has trained blasters and the other one doesn't. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how much of an economic improvement you can achieve just by getting better at the craft. It really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's worth it, and it's not a big investment. Whether you're the blaster or you have employees who are going to be blasting, or partners in the business, whomever it may be, everyone who's going to hold the nozzle and do this work, it's a very small investment. It's one of the best investments you could ever make, is making sure that you're trained and you understand how this should work. And that's exactly why we're doing these things. And I suspect that in a couple months, we get a little closer to the real, when those packs start to run out, people are going to be wanting more of this. Okay, how do we do it? And we're going to bring that content forward to the group. We'll keep doing this, but there's no reason to get behind the 8-ball. We can get ahead of it now, and get you trained up now. This is very easy stuff to learn. It's totally worth doing. There's a lot on this page. And again, if you're not quite making this transition just yet, this might be a little bit, further into your process when you do, but there's some basic tools. We talked about when the nozzle wears out. Well, that item down there at the bottom, the nozzle orifice gauge, it's a simple tool. You could get a drill bit. It's supposed to be the same size as the nozzle. There's a number of ways to do this. Not that these parts are expensive. They're, we're talking things that are under $100 a part, but you want to check, at least on a weekly basis, the condition of your nozzle, like it's not worn out. Because as soon as it's worn out, it's time for a new one. Goodbye. It's going to cost you so much money to be blasting with a worn down nozzle. It'll make you go slower. You'll use more energy, and you'll get lower quality surfaces too. This is real, and your abrasive consumption may even increase because you're not able to get the proper pressure. It's just so important, right? We sell these. They have the 10X logo in them, so you can know it's one we recommend. But our green range, where we see the very fastest speed, starts at 110. It's color coded. It's very simple. Red, stop. Something's not working. You're losing money. You're in the yellow. You're okay, but pay attention. You're in the green. You're screaming. Don't worry about it. But being able to measure your blast pressure near the nozzle in one of these systems is so important, because think of that as your money gauge. If you're in the green, blasting is going to be supporting your business to make you money. If you're in the yellow, probably. If you're in the red, no way. You're going to be losing money. It's time to figure this out so you can get into the green. And so many times when people first engage with a technician at 10X, they tell us, yeah, my compressor's got 110. It's great. Okay. But what's the pressure at the nozzle? And that guy who's got 110 at the compressor, most of the time has 60 or 70 PSI at the nozzle. And when we get that crew to 100 or higher at the nozzle, they're 2, 3, sometimes 4 times faster. I mean, it's a huge difference. Now, this is not necessary, but we recommend it. The nozzle timer. Knowing how many nozzle minutes you spend can allow you to really hone in and understand your cost, your total cost per square foot for blasting or surface work. We have a daily checklist here and basic data collection. I'm not going to go through all this now. Steve put on a great webinar last year where we do a much deeper dive onto this. And if you're interested in that, we can link it to you in the description. Now, this kind of explains the example that we're using here is a larger job, and largely because we put this together quickly. Once Jacob came to me and said, hey, we need to talk about this. People are asking all the time. You got to get some information out there because people want to know, and you guys are a great group of, who have the resources to bring this knowledge forward and get it organized. So we put this together quickly for that reason. So we're kind of recycling one slide from Steve's last presentation. I don't know, Steve, if you want to talk through this or if you'd like me to go, hobble my way through it, but we wanted to include this so that people have some background on the case that this can actually make.
Yeah, I can quickly cover this. So when we did that other webinar, we were focused on profitability. And what Jake covered today, everything from the compressor to the nozzle and the way the blasting system is set up, all matters greatly. But then there's the training of the blasters. And so what we did is did a little economic analysis. This is very conservative. The actual savings are probably, the actual benefits are probably higher than what's in this chart, but we just said if you have a blasting operation, let's just say the base case and your net profit on that is 55K. And so you get 10 more. Case one is you get 10 more pressure at your compressor by either tuning it or by setting it a little higher, or however you do that. And then in so doing, you're able to just decrease the feed rate for your metering valve on your pot by 10% as well. Because the higher the pressure, the less abrasive feed you need. They go together. Well, that alone brings your net profit from $55,000 to $75,000. It's a huge increase, just that. And then let's just say you go a little further. You set the compressor a little bit higher. You're able to turn your meter down a little bit lower, and it jumps again another, almost 20K in additional profit, and you're nearly double where you were to begin with. And all you did was increase your pressure. So now you say, okay, I'm going to train my blasters. And let's just say after you train your blasters, you get them 10% more blasting speed. Well, there you go again. You go from 91 to 103. It's another 12K. This is just an example case, but you can see how it all builds on this. And now at the end, in case 4, we're assuming that you blast all day, every day, and if you finish a job, you start another one. Well, if you start another job right after you finish the previous job, your increase in productivity will increase your revenue because you'll be able to do more jobs in the same amount of time. And if you take that revenue increase into account, it just jumps. It nearly all the benefits you got from improving, nearly double when you add the revenue component. And this is how blasting can transform whatever business you're operating.
Thank you for covering that, Steve. Definitely did better than I could have done. So I'm going to try to sum everything up here. Right, methylene chloride is going away. The supply of it's already dwindling, and it very soon will not be available for most in the industry. And even if you're working on wood furniture and have this special cutout and go through the case of it, it is going away. We're talking 2029 is the last little tiny cutout that they're making available. And as Jacob said earlier, the powder formulations are improving all the time. And the chemical stripper that's in use are in decline because we're taking the most effective active ingredient out of the mix. It's not going to be available. So we're seeing this kind of twofold. It's going to get harder and harder to do this kind of work with that process. So we're making our recommendation to switch to blasting. And if you get ahead of it, we can help you adapt your business to this and do it in a way where we can actually probably help you increase your profitability and your throughput as well. So that's all we have for everybody. We really appreciate it. I have a couple of questions that came in by email here that I'll read off. And Jacob, this is a little off topic, but I'm going to take it. So somebody sent it in asking about the marketing of a powder coating business. Will it be an advantage, or I guess he's asking if you or I or Steve think it'll be an advantage to start marketing as a business that's not using any chemical strippers?
I mean, it's marketing 101. There's going to be different targets everywhere, and there's going to be people out there that like the idea that, you're supportive of everything becoming green. So, I mean, there's definitely a marketing target that you could hit with that. Do I necessarily think it'll bring you a ton more business? No, I think just showing your finishes and the quality of your work is really where it's at. Just like if you're selling a product, it's all about, does it work? Is it functional? And is it what you need? So.
Okay. I tend to agree with that. When it comes to marketing, the basics I say are being known before you're needed in this industry. if your business name is known before they need you, then when they need you, you're top of mind. You're gonna get the call, or you're gonna get the message, or whatever, and you're gonna get to quote on that job. And the other item is actually invest in marketing, right? Have some sort of presence. You don't have to spend all your free cash flow on that unless you're just starting up and you have some big goals, but have some investment in it, and make sure that it's managed. What you manage will tend to improve, and what you don't will tend to either stagnate or even decline. The other question we had is actually, what about Cerakote and ceramic coatings? Not removal, but surface prep. And I can tell you right now, 10X products have been used by gunsmiths and other applications that are using some of the ceramic coatings, and have been since 2019. We have customers that have been using the Epix MP for 5, 6, going on 6 years now, and love the product, and they get great results. I don't know if Jacob or Steve have any comments on that, but that was.
We've never. I mean, we do a lot of Cerakote. We do a lot of powder coat. I mean, we've even done epoxy and stuff like that. But I've never had anything come back, especially with like surface defect type things or adhesion issues. Never. So.
Steve, any comments on the ceramic coatings?
Yep. Don't get me started. So all I'll say is that, we didn't go into this today, but, we take these particles from the mineral wool manufacturing process, and without getting into the details of it, they make that wool material to be durable, to be, to certainly have insulation properties, but also, the physical properties to make a nice durable product for long-term use. And they make these particles at the same time they make the fibers, and we're using the particles to make an abrasive. And we just happen to be the ones who discovered that the properties that they need in mineral wool just make for an amazing set of properties for blasting. And that's why it's so good on these difficult coatings. It's because the particles have impact strength, they're elastic. Instead of shattering when they hit the surface, they rebound off of the surface. And that means that all the energy that particle had did work on that very difficult coating. And that's why it comes off. And you could compare it. You can compare it to some very good abrasives. Compare it to aluminum oxide, compare it to, and you'll see the difference. It can be dramatic, dramatically faster. And as Jacob said, the reason the surface is so clean is because fewer of the particles are actually breaking when they hit the surface. So there's no debris left on the surface, and that makes the coating perform better. And that's why it's so bright and clean. Anybody, if you've not used our products before, you'll see the first time you blast with it that the surface is really bright and clean. It's different than what you might have seen before.
Yep. Okay. I don't have anything else. Steve, Jacob, you guys got any parting comments?
No, I don't have anything.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody watching the video, and we encourage you to reach out either through the group 10xem.com or give us a call if you need to. The phone number's on the website as well. Thanks for tuning in, and see you all on the next one.